Intellectual Growth in Recovery. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Recovery Classroom. My name is Drew. I am a recovering alcoholic. I'm still sober, and I'm still enjoying each and every single day. I've never met somebody who's ever regretted getting clean and sober. If you and your friends are local to the Huntington, West Virginia area this Friday night, and every Friday night for that fact, at 7 o'clock we have our Friday night crosstalk meeting. Come on down to 5747 East Pea Ridge Road in Huntington for what we like to call the quickest hour in recovery. It's truly just several of us sitting around talking about everything under the sun. It's an actual back and forth exchange of ideas and discussion and dialogue. It's not one of those meetings where you walk in, you sit down, and they read to you, and then they lecture you about how everything you do is wrong, everything you're thinking about is wrong, and you start thinking like they think, or you're going to go back out and die. And it also strokes their ego too, makes them feel important. That's not what it's about. This is our Friday night crosstalk meeting is an actual recovery meeting where you get to sit and talk about recovery, no matter how you do it. Hell, if you're doing some other way, we want to know about it. We want you to come in and sit down and tell us all about it, because one day, truth be told, it may end up helping us too. So this Friday night at 7 o'clock, we'll see you there. In that line of thinking, as I mentioned the word thinking, well, I was really surprised whenever I came into recovery and I realized that my problem wasn't my drinking. I spent years trying to convince myself that, well, drinking's your problem. And I was like, no, it's not my problem. It's management. It's discipline. It's all these other things. It's not the drinking. Well, then I finally did reach the point where I realized maybe this drinking is my problem. So then I started in recovery. I get clean and sober, and I started on this recovery journey, and come to find out, I was right. Drinking was not my problem. My problem was my thinking. And it became so apparent to me whenever I read in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous where Bill Wilson writes, he says the real problem with the alcoholic centers in his mind rather than his body. So again, I don't have a drinking problem, I have a thinking problem. You may not have a drugging problem, you have a thinking problem. And it makes sense if we stop and think about it. Looking back over the 46 years of drinking or whatever, there were many times where a situation would take place, would unfold, and I didn't want to think about it. So what would I do? I would pour booze down my throat. And that way the booze allowed me to not have to think about it. A certain event would take place and I might have experienced certain emotions that I didn't want to experience. So what would I do? Pour booze down my throat. That way I didn't have to worry about feeling. You've heard people use that phrase, numbing the pain, right? That was me. So I didn't want to think, I didn't want to feel, and so I used booze to pour down my throats to keep me from doing this thing. So why? Why did I not want to think? Why did I not want to feel? Truth be told, probably because I didn't know how to. I didn't know how to navigate that labyrinth of thought, that labyrinth of emotions. I didn't know how to navigate. I was scared. I'm going to get honest. I was scared. And so I would drink. Well, when I came into recovery, I realized, hey, I see my mistakes. I used to claim that I was the most rational and logical person that you'd probably ever meet. And I look back and none of that was true. Well, I might have thought that in my head, but none of that was true because after all, I wouldn't think. I would drink. I wouldn't experience emotions. I would drink because I didn't want to experience and feel and think. I didn't want to put in that work of applying logic, reason, and rationale to my thought processes. Now, when I got clean and sober, I was like, okay, now I'm going to have to put in the work. In other words, I'm going to have to stop and evaluate certain things. I'm going to have to stop and experience emotions. I'm going to have to actually apply that logic, reason, and rationale to the different situations that always seem to come up in my life. And I thank God today that I have the ability. I learned. That was one of the things to my recovery is I was able to learn how to apply that logic, reason, and rationale. And it goes on to the deeper point anyway, where a lot of people, they'll come into recovery and when they first come in, they're willing to change their thinking. The problem is they stop changing their thinking eventually. In other words, they come in, they're willing to change their thinking, they do change their thinking, and then they stop. They don't allow that new thinking to ever change and evolve. And if we're not evolving, if we're not growing on an intellectual basis, that's the quickest step towards a downward descent that I just don't want to go to. Yes, I came in and I was willing to learn. I learned new things about myself. I learned new pathways, and I was able to apply some of those things. But I wanted to keep learning and growing. You won't ever see me married and stuck in one line of thinking. I'm always willing to have that intellectual conversation with somebody, and that's what we do at our crosstalk meeting. I'm always willing to have that conversation because you may be able to have that dialogue, back and forth exchange of ideas to where Hey, you know what? You just said something that flipped a switch in my head, and now I think about a certain situation differently. That's growth. That's the evolution, and that's that intellectual stimulation that I need in order to thrive in my life. And it's by the grace of God that I was able to get off my alcohol, get away from that, and actually start being able to use the brain that God gave me. Just as Bill Wilson writes himself in the Big Book, I think it's around step 10 or 11, that he says, after all, God gave us brains to use, right? He's expecting us to use it, and I plan on, for one, using it every chance I get. So with that being said, I'm out of time. Thank you guys for letting me come in and share 5 to 10 minutes of your day with you. You guys absolutely keep me sober, and I could not be any more appreciative. We'll be talking again soon, guys. Remember, you can't get drunk if you don't take that first drink.